page, Southwest Wisconsin is a perennial agriculture farm. As of this year, in annual crops, and the annual crops are being grown as a soil building technique in preparation after the oak savanna, which was the natural plant community of the Midwest. And so part of what of surviving and thriving where we're at. And so in order to establish a situation that you haven't been in, it was almost a full year course on the ecology of restoration agriculture, and I like it. It's going to be up to you guys to do some homework and follow up to see what is available for folks to purchase online. A couple of different ways to look at stable plant community types that you know that you're in a particular plant community, because as soon as you leave it, you go, oh, in the first place. One of the original lines of thinking and a lot of research of initial floristic composition down the bottom. And the theory was that all of these plants, whether they're seeds or plant particles, is set up, established by disturbance, which we'll get to in a bit. And then as time goes on, plants, grasses, and herbs flourish real early on, but then later on, as the annuals start to disappear because the conditions change. That this set of species changes the conditions, so it's no longer, it comes through intolerant trees and shrubs, bushes and vines. Intolerant means they're not understory underneath a mature canopy. The classic ones around here, the upper Midwest, much of the USA, are the oaks. They type. However, if something else gets over the top of them, they'll shade out and they'll die. They'll even shade themselves out. The lower branches drop. Not all things happened that way. Some of it happens with this, the relay floristics side, and found that the conditions that these annual plants set up were really good, so they start to thrive. Well, then news goes through the shrub phase, and then maybe some birds bring in some seeds of the sun-loving trees and so on. Over time, it's been observed that, both of these actually are accurate, that there are some systems that the whole entire new inputs that come into it along the way. So if we just have a little bit of understanding of change of ecosystems, there's a lot to do with our stable state happen, and it can kick it back. It can kick it all the way back to an annual grassland, or it can be a lighter disturbance that only takes it back to grassland, and so on. Well, the linear idea, there's still a certain linearity through time, if you're a lot more complex than that. And it's been shown over time that there's actually possibility of having no such thing as an end community because it's always going. But a stable state, a plant community type that's a state, that site, all the different species that are there, and any newcomers that try to come in don't really get a toehold. The whole community, it's in balance with the soil, with the rainfall pattern, the weather patterns, temperature regime. System can be disturbed, and there's a number of different ways that those systems can be disturbed. And, well, there goes my thing again. That any time, any point in time along the way, that this system could turn into, if we have an initial, here's a degraded state, something happened to this site, fire, windstorm, the initial floristic composition of the species that we plant, maybe we're trying to go to this desired state, in a life, taking care of the species that are already there to a certain extent, harvesting yields. Well, then there are some sort of just focus and the dominance of any particular species in that system, where New Forest Farm is now in the successional phase, is I've got enough shade going on, and there are enough maple, sugar maple, and basket, my hazelnuts, and so on. And so what will happen is this historic event of all these seeds coming in, well, some more grass in there, maybe get some grazing animals, maybe do a light surface fire to burn off those late successional plants. I need hazelnut, oak, hazel, apple, mulberry, raspberry, elderberry system. I'll let the sugar maples come in underneath and the basswoods come underneath because maybe they want a sugar maple basket states possible. try to go light on this. I think that this is the big rabbit hole that we could go spinning down into. This is where annual, or at least horticulture, pesticide, the right kind of fertilizer, soil balancing, you know, the effective microorganic inputs. I'm doing more on the breeding work side of things to come up with the species, select for the species that will survive. Anytime we prune, mow, plow, graze animals, cut, harvest things, they type at a certain period of time using these three tools. Species performance control actually has been fire. And I won't go too deep into different kinds of fire. Ponderosa pine in the American Intermountain and West area. And fires, many of them have thick bark so they can withstand surface fires and survive. I mean, buds that are hidden underneath in what's called a basal crook of the root, so they're hidden from the direct. Cones here are what are called serotinous cones. Some of the cones just ripen, they dry, they open up, and the seeds so they can blow in on the wind. Well, some of the serotinous cones are glued shut, and they can only be are what were natural to most of the arid lands around the planet, where, and the fire now provides sites for seeds to colonize. And so the term regenerative means that the system is able to, the plant community type is able to regenerate. And that's the type of permaculture systems we're designing. It's a natural system analog to natural day. This was this winter. I was working on a site across the street from this when they decided to light it up. On the surface, it'll stimulate a lot of diversity in the non-grass plants. There'll be a lot of the organic matter disappears. The here, and you end up with stuff like this. And this is a totally different. It was last week. We talked about a guy raising raising pigs, and his use of pigs, organic like sticks and organic matter left behind, but the mineral soil was exposed. And then they did a underneath, and then it looked like, larger trees with grass underneath. A catastrophic surface fire. I chose this picture because it's just an incredible example of a crown fire. Just they move so fast, but this one looks like it's both intense and severe, burning everything to a crisp. And it wasn't until I was just reviewing this once before 89, one of the things that you get in your backpack that you have always ready at hand, and you can reach it right over in its space blanket thing, that you learn how to step into it. You've got loops in each corner for 2 feet, hoping that in this picture they were just testing these things. Either that or these guys are in deep, deep doo-doo, and that is not. Crown fires can be catastrophic. Most of the organic matter is just converted into heat, and they're highly prone to blowing away in the wind, eroding with water. A lot of the news, not a complete loss. This, once again, this is going to go point out the erosion. Just look at it as like, bacteria and fungi, the decayed organisms aren't working quite as fast, or at least not all of them are. The humid environment, the charring just helps to prevent their decay. And then dry creep around hill and cover everything up. So obviously this is where your light-seeded species can really have a field goal real fast. They're ahead of the ball game. Once again, this is post-forest fire. This is fire. Not all is lost. Look at how most of the standing trees have now fallen over. The trees that have and flowers that are starting to sprout. Some of these little trees are probably legacy trees, that they were some as a fire front came this way. And look who shows up. This is now actually other plants. This is one of my favorite flowers. This is in a black spruce, boreal forest regions. Most amazing honey, almost crystal clear. It's beautiful stuff. Holly pine. All are fire associated trees, and they're set up, and once again you're back to your forest community type. Well, now let's go to North America. This is what a clear cut type. And forest comes from when American chestnut was liquidated back in the 1920s and 30s by the logging industry. They needed another timber resource, and American chestnut blight happened. They've got records from the sawmills that took these logs in. They were somewhere around 400 years old. 400 years after Columbus showed up, which meant that all the European civilized diseases had wiped out, so then all the trees grew up. So it was a mixed mosaic of trees. Well, so this probably, on this picture here, is probably this. And what I'll do at this point in time, because they're going to change the picture slightly, is I'll bring on Sam, if Sam Palmer is there. And I'll just give me a second. Okay. All right, Sam Palmer, you're on. Okay, so I'm going to go right to here first, and what on earth is this picture doing when... Yeah, this is an apricot orchard in Afghanistan. This is sort of where various places in the world that were, desertified and destroyed by conventional agriculture, and I find myself, that sort of started my gears turning. Yeah. When you realize that, people have to grow whatever the foodstuffs were, and that apricots and walnuts, especially in that part of the world, were heavy. Yeah, so this is a piece of ground that I bought in New Hampshire, which I think quite well describes. And not only was my land clear cut, but the previous owner, he just sort of owned a large excavator in it. So we've got what once was some nice New England forest soils, just flipped over and creek. Where in New Hampshire is this? The town is Epsom. We're central New Hampshire near New England pronounces Concord. And actually what's fascinating, some of the lead derived from granite or the metamorphic layers that were around the granite cores. There's a very huge shortage terrestrially of calcium, and so there are plants and healthy animals and all that. But what you'll notice is without the calcium, this is and the topsoil doesn't develop as fast. And so this is the first of the series of slides I sent you on managing my water. You quickly find that you have like quicksand in New Hampshire because there's nothing there holding
this is a different picture. Drainage ditches that run straight downhill, perfectly perpendicular to contour in the previous agricultural use 35 plus years ago was a blueberry farm. And so they had these ditches in.
And another water picture. Yeah, isn't it amazing? Look at the runoff.
So this is the middle of the clear cut, and there's, I've got some notes here. So I took 300-foot span, and every time it rains, every drop of water that hits just speeds up, listen, then it leaves the property forever.
Wow. Taking what's left of the soil with it, yeah.
Yeah.
And the roots will help to get more moisture to penetrate right over here. The plant turn it into mud right away, so that's part of the beneficial process. What is this?
Yep, that's a waste of organic matter back in the soil.
How long have you owned the property?
So I've owned it since last summer, just.
Okay, is it safe to assume that buying a clear cut was a lot more affordable than buying a beautiful, huge virgin forest with, ample
with, developed farmland. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that, permaculture, restoration agriculture, or whatever you call it, is the fact that we can take ecologically logical rehab while feeding ourselves and having a modest livelihood with, look at this.
Sort of at the bottom edge of the property, and pigs will find a wallow. And
In Wisconsin, I disc the fields with my van. It was crazy. Oh,
the germination where we dissed and where we didn't was not that great a difference.
site been abandoned before you guys put the rye on it?
So he cut, and then he had been working on it with machines until it was cut, and then it was he just kept working it over with the dozer and the excavator. I think he was trying to be able to do more good, or more harm than good. Right. And somebody who knows what they're doing.
Now, what is this?
This is our water management system. This is our master line system. But on the right, shows where all the swales, all the berms are going. And two, we didn't get our water management system actually with a laser level, and now we're planting trees, and we're making sure that we plant those trees in line with this. We're putting in, so we're doing our water first, even though we're not quite doing our water first.
Right. Well, as long as you know where to go, because the pattern has been established.
Right, and you don't plant trees where you're about to put them.
And so now what are we looking at? Some of the legacy competition?
So I stuck this in because last week you were talking about in a forest with a closed canopy, and they've got lighter root systems, and they got very little that isn't totally clear cut, was aggressively thinned. So we've got all these maples that are like 80 feet. We've got all the endomorphic branching that happens when you clear cut. So that's another view of it. And I think the next, so it's sort of a couple of slides as a cautionary. When you thin trees, you really need to,
And give it 3 to 5 years and settle in, let everything thicken up and stiffen up. And those of you who've been paying attention, it was then direct seed with walnut, oak, white oak transplants, and American chestnut tree, those little trees, even though I only send out about a third of them, they're just twisted and bent all over. Take more years to do it. Let them toughen up and stiffen up.
what I've noticed so far is what's being for us in this area of the site is a good thing. Those are trees that are gonna come down anyway. It's not an apple polyculture here.
So you're putting this electronet right over the.
You can sort of see behind behind the electronet, that is just an impenetrable birch and raspberry thicket. I mean, I didn't tell you it's not miserable to drag electronet through because there's slash all over the ground that catches on it. However, the effective little actual soil contact, so it's not really decomposing. The pigs are transforming that, so it's worth it.
Yeah, and then they're saying you put like a table saw blade, carbide table saw blade on that, and that's perfect for all of these little trees are so tiny and they're so thick. If you go in and took off half of them, they're not super useful tool at that stage.
Yeah.
Now, somebody's got a tractor. Now, look at that exhaust pipe.
The original equipment. So this is our swell maker. Is a little John Deere plow with a 25 horsepower tractor. They'll scratch their head at you, but you know, we're in a berm with this, and it works. In New Hampshire, you're going to bounce off a lot of rocks, and you're going to have to get off the tractor a lot.
Does it have any kind of? It doesn't have any kind of like a quick release for if you hit rock.
It's not a trip plow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Probably pretty affordable though.
Yeah, not bad. So that's looking down a ditch and a berm with a couple of passes, but this is getting us there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. You know, it doesn't matter if it takes a couple of passes. You just do
the first one we cut. This well now is like 3 weeks old. It's rained several times on it, and it just for a day and a half and sinks in and goes where we want it. When it's raining really hard, we've had a few thunderstorms lately. Out the level sill and down off the property. Yeah.
That's what I was actually going to ask you about by the time it gets to you.
It's been a super, super wet spring. And that's really why I'm not as well dried out before I can drive that tractor on it without sinking into oblivion. So,
What do I see over here? This is one of the famous New England gray snakes or something? Or?
Yeah, it's a New England gray snake. It's full of H2O.
Your plant community that you're striving to imitate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
you?
I was
And we're definitely on this us. We've got another 100 or 200 feet to the top of the hill above us. Our soils are those species, the birches, the oaks, the white pines, with the late successional being beech. And I sort of list out the species in the community.
Are you saving? Are you saving
ton of stump sprout beech from when it was cut, which putting a row of chestnut in on each of those, and anywhere that there's a beech, yeah, and then any beeches that are any larger, we're gonna keep, and we're gonna look for those ones that produce.
the bark? I forgot what the bark disease is, and then that are pest and disease resistant, and really do. Now, this is one thing I pulled up to go with your slides here. One of the things that I saw, I'm about this thing, beach drops. What the heck is beach drops? And so I looked up beach drops, and there it is. The times it's non-photosynthetic, and it actually infects the roots of beech tree with some kind of disease that got in on the roots, and then that beech tree grew funny or whatever. But that's beech drops. And
I don't offhand, but when we find them here, we're gonna keep them and figure it out.
yeah, just chew on the root, and it's a nice little. You could, if you're a singer at all, you can sing the root, and of course it was used for making root beers. wide open, get those rye nutrients, get the organic matter going again, get the soil life going again, and then you start putting in your trees, accelerating that process. And I've tried to figure out what this picture was all about, and I can't quite figure it out, Sam.
Some leftover slack and dead trees from the clear cut with chestnuts.
I was wondering about that because now this is one of the things. Don't give it away. There's only like 1,000 hops trellised on the chestnuts, and then in the alley in between, we'll in the fall we'll plant our winter's barley. So but do it pasture cropping style where we just mow the site clean and then do a no-till drill in the perennial pasture between our rows of trees, and we get our hops, and we're making, I use a picture, one of the pictures that I told you that was pixelated, that's probably a chestnut tree also, right?
That is a chestnut tree as well, yeah. Super stoked because I just planted 300 trees by hand in a day.
That's a big day, that is, especially with all,
Yeah.
yeah. Have you found any hazelnuts on the site at all?
Yeah, so that was another beaked hazel down by our creek, down by the brook where it's wet, which is where we're planting our, I like it there. And we've got an American chestnut that's still alive, not on our property. When I was out for a walk with my little toddler the other day, and I looked down and I was like, that really looks like a chestnut bird.
Wow. Yeah, so I was going to mention that earlier that you were kind of at about the furthest north. Wow. And this is obviously some sort of pine, probably pixelated.
Yeah, so this is a pixelated eastern white pine with.
Bought those.
I'm not that guy, yeah. So this one has definitely failed, but there are a couple others I grafted a little late this year. I think that if I had done it earlier when it was colder, they would have.
Take some more pictures of those, Sam, and send them to me, and I'll take a look at them. That's really fascinating because I was Koreans on top of it, but of course life goes on, and the white pines ended up getting taller than white pine that you can graft them onto each other. It's a great strategy because you can usually buy like pine seedlings, white pine seedlings, cheap, famous New England berry bushes.
Yeah, the berries are like the color of your shirt.
All right.
And I think the next, so this is a beautiful one that's on one of the edges and thriving. these earlier this spring, and just, a ton of stuff that I'm not yet savvy enough to identify. Having good ground contact is just stacked on top of each other, and I would say this is a 2-3 week old picture.
Did you plant any of those grasses?
No, and that's the only grasses that we're getting. I think the angle of this picture makes it look a bit thicker and lusher than it is.
Yes. You have a chainsaw, I assume?
Yeah. Yeah, so this persists for a long time.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people that, it put it in a pile. They want to have like this brush pile. It's like, well, that's a nice idea, but why do we want a brush pile? If you got good ground contact with it, chop it up in little pieces and jump up and down on it, get it to touch the ground, it'll decay and go away.
These guys are doing a great job of jumping up and down on all the sticks and slabs of 4 girls and a boar, and we've got 6 feeders on the farm from somebody else's place right now that we're gonna.
I haven't figured that out. What's that right there?
I can't see your cursor. Oh, so the pigs they don't eat the birch. They don't touch the birches if they don't have some motivation. So they get a grand right. They're rooting, and it works really, really well if you give them something, to start rooting in the ground. They turn up that birch really well, and the other stuff they don't touch.
It's like starting fluid or something.
Yeah, prime the pigs. So this is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How long were they here? The mineral soil there, that's a lot like when there's a blowdown, the root mat, all the soil, you really accelerate things. Have you considered like inoculating with any compost?
Much time in the day when you're a brand new farmer. So I think that this fall we will. I've got a tank. I've got and start using that behind the pigs, but not yet. Right now we're just seeding a pasture mix in behind attic, and they hoof it in for me, and it's doing well.
Is there a difference between the left side and the right side here?
And they were in there for 3 days, and I kept them in there, deliberately. Took them out when they had done
is this some of your pasture mix coming up in this one?
Yep, so that's the pit, there's seeds in the soil wherever you are. Once you expose it, something's gonna, yeah.
That's a hemlock cone. Here we've got some stuff coming out. Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah, here's pasture mix. It's sort of beautiful to watch as the pigs move paddock to paddock to paddock, and you've got the one coming up and one behind that's got a much thicker stand.
So, definitely take pictures of them like spring through fall and just see what the site looks like so we get an idea, on top, tip it on its side and show us a picture of the soil profile, and then do it again in the fall and eggs. And you can go do a soil test, and then we'll start to track this from start to finish, having more organic matter, etc., more fertile soil.
Yeah,
What are these red flags there?
waiting for the slide to show, sorry.
Okay, we're running out of time, so I'm pushing through this a little.
Getting a double row of blueberries in it that'll be below the chestnuts.
Oh, blueberries, cool. So what do you got? Chestnut. Yeah, there's an oak tree in there, so that's a nice shade right now. The grass is
The next row of chestnuts is in the far right of that picture, kind of on the shade sunline. Here's a blueberry.
and look at the red maple seeds. We know what we're going to have sprouting there. This is a great picture because you've got like exposed mineral soil, legacy strawberry. That's great. A lot of action going on there. Oh, and look at these guys in Alabama.
There's wild raspberries all over the place.
One of the things, this tree right here is, and they like the sun, so this one right here, you may want to make sure, unless you want them to grow, they're explode. That's their job, is to colonize this site as fast as possible. It's one of the early pioneer species. It's ferns. All of these are early successional, sun-loving, colonize the site after a catastrophic event. These are
raspberries. Just you find it wild, and in our case, not a lot of weed competition where we planted raspberries.
That's actually great. Establish your weed control is immaculate.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? Are these striped reds?
I could, you're Mark Shepard, I'm not, but I'm pretty sure we've got reds.
They don't usually get all that big. This will be about as big as they
this is just what these are, a gazillion stems per acre, and just primed to be thinned and turned into mushroom logs.
They're right at the sky.
They are.
Here.
Yeah, this is the edge up by the house. It was lawn, woods.
Pretty forest. Pretty forest. Oh, that's the trees, and their job is to grow fast. They're small seed goes in on the mineral soil, grow fast, fall over and rot.
And still alive, there's mushrooms just, climbing out. And this is the thick stuff. That's actually the sugar shack. And that sugar shack is only 20 feet away, from the camera. And by my count, there's at least 400 bolts of, good mushroom logs just in there.
So you're gonna get, what's the deal with your fence?
This is just,
here's some of your
Reishi show up.
Is that on the hemlock?
It's on hemlock, yeah. So, I haven't yet made a phone call to Field and Forest, but I can't find it seem to be a Chinese variety, and are the ones native to the U.S.
And you evidently have a small pond.
Yeah, we have a small pond. The beavers grew it.
That's not your last photo. I'm gonna actually play with the last photo, but and actually start surface feeding fish, mid-zone feeding fish, bottom feeder fish, like freshwater mussels, swims in the water. So there's a lot you can do. More protein per acre out of a pond than you can off the terrestrial system. Corgis?
Indeed, yeah.
Questions? Thank you. I'll keep it on this one. Thank you, Sam, for being with us and showing us your approval in a good mixing of that organic matter and the parent material, getting them to trample in your cedar whole oak family with your oak and hazelnut and chestnut and apples and so questions. And Mark B, you'd have to read them to me. Thanks, Sam.
Right. All right. So, Paulo,
have to see down the trails. Like on this photograph here, if this was a logging operation, it rye for fast, quick cover, then it was perennial rye, smooth brome, orchard grass, and white clover, I think was the mix with your DNR or some grazing groups. We're going to have to end with, I'll take one more question. Yeah. I'll read the next question from Jordan Bantui, and he also did at the White Oak Pasture workshop. You were describing your multi-business to variety of restoration and grains. Yes. Okay, so does it still exist? And Institute, and it's P.O. Box 258-072. I made the initial deposit, and they now have an endowment fund. So you there was a little bit of a kind of tripwire word in there. It's like doing the research to do something that's contrary to what we've been doing will change, because we now have new information. We're doing research. Our goal is to as closely imitate our natural plant communities as food producing capacity of it, so we can feed ourselves while simultaneously producing clean air, fresh water, wildlife, called Back the Lane Farm, where just this spring we went into an abandoned Catherine Hart. So, thank you everyone for being here. We'll see you next week, and anybody who wants to volunteer, or any of the folks who participated in our